Yeah, so I'm going to teach you guys how to actually build your modules in Reaktor 6. And this is twofold, of course, because I use Reaktor 6 and I want more little modules. I want more blocks. You know what I mean? So today I'm just going to walk you guys through all the steps from start to finish on how to build your own modules for Reaktor 6. Firstly, we need to go to the user library. Yeah, got a bunch of cool stuff in here. But what we're going to need to do is just go to the native instruments section here, right? Go to this building template. Now I've already downloaded this, but this is going to give you everything you need to basically start building a module. So then we're going to go over, we want to build basically, right? So we want to go into the ensemble view, right? So you know what I mean? You can go to just new ensemble, right? That's all we're at, okay? And here's the idea. So you want to go to that blocks template. We're just going to drag that in here. Cool. And now you can see, wow, we've got, you know, a bunch of crap. All right. So how are we going to build our module? Firstly, we're going to want to sort of look at these, right? And look at, hey, you know, what are the sizes of these? You know what I mean? And you can even look at, so I'll use Control 1 and Control 2 to switch between the like panel view without the inputs and the panel view with the inputs, okay? Take a look at these, you know what I mean? Sort of get a feel for how big you want your module to be, right? So the way that these are laid out, right? So you have light and dark modules, okay? So I've been building everything, you know, system discrete is built with light modules, right? And I want to build another module for that. So we're going to look at this section, right? So it'll say light width equals 2, 2, 1. What does that mean, right? Light width equals 2, and then in parentheses, 2-1. Okay. So the 2 here, so light width equals 2, not in parentheses. So we see 2, 3, 4, 8 right off the top here, right? Those are the HP, right? That's like, you know what I mean? You know how like Eurorack, you can get like a 6 HP module, right? And it's like, you know, however many centimeters, you know what I mean? It's the same thing here, right? So they're HP system, and these are just the measurements for it, right? So if I want to build a 3 HP module, I'll look at, well, the ones that have a 3 out in front. Word? So then the numbers in the parentheses are just showing, okay, how wide, right? How many columns of inputs do I have and how many columns of outputs do I have, okay? So we see 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1 for all of these modules, right? That means that on the left side, there's 2 columns for inputs, right? So we see this one has 8 inputs, right? Beautiful. This one also has 8 inputs. I guess they're all going to have 8 inputs, but we can configure that later. Whereas we see the 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1 column for inputs, 1 column for outputs. Sweet. And then we look at this one, it's 1, 2, 1 column for inputs, 2 columns for outputs. All right. So let's say, yeah, okay. So I want to do light width 1, 1. That's it, right? Light width equals 2, 1, 1. That's what I want to do. So I'll go in here, and these are organized by the inputs and outputs, okay? So I'll go here, light width equals 2, 1, 1, right? That's what I want. So I'll take that, and I'll just paste it in there. And now you can see, okay, this one that's highlighted is the module that we're looking at, right? If you need to pick it out of the bunch, you can just rename it, right? We'll just name it OSC because we're going to make an oscillator today, right? Everybody loves oscillators. And I'm just going to drag this down to the second row. All right, so now that we're in here, we're not actually going to worry about like the differences between the core cells and the primary blocks, you know what I mean? Whatever, right? Because this takes care of a lot of that, okay? Now they made this, I wouldn't say they made it intuitive, but they made it pretty easy to like start getting in there, okay? So check this out, right? We're building an oscillator. So what I'm going to want, firstly, is, and they don't even show it on here. You kidding me? Okay, so if I go to this view, right, we have this sort of like tuning knob, right? So we have a coarse frequency and fine and something that lets you enable keyboard tracking or not, right? Nothing crazy. So we'll take this, right? So we'll go into dark on light, okay? Because these are dark knobs on a light background, right? And dark text on a light background. So we'll go there. And we want to look for oscillator tuning, right? And so now this is, you know what I mean? Whenever you want a control, right? You want a knob, you want a little parameter, right? You're going to come into here, okay? If you want to be able to modulate that parameter, right? You'll pick the mod knobs. Cool. If you don't care about modulating anything, you'll just use regular knobs or, you know, regular buttons or whatnot. Anyways, you know, we can talk about how to make your own knobs at a later time as well, but I'm not going to do that here. But so what we want is the oscillator tuning, right? So I'll just copy that module. I'll go back out here to my oscillator and we'll paste it in. Cool. And so now our oscillator has tuning, basically, right? So how do we actually start hooking this thing up? Okay. So here's the thing, right? And we're in the panel view. So this is like, you know, all of your GUI stuff is going to go in here. And all of the other, like, you know, all of the programming is going to go in here. Okay. So what we're going to do, we're going to look at the GUI section. Where it says A-B buttons, we're just going to connect it up to the A-B port. Nothing crazy. So each one of the modulation inputs, or each one of the modulation knobs, right? So just looking back here, they all have a mod return and an output, okay? Right, so we want to be able to get the knob position and be able to map it to like the GUI settings and whatnot. So it basically just creates a loop. So we'll need to wrap that back into itself. So we're going to take this C0, right? That's just, you know, one of the control numbers, plug it back into the mod return. And now for the pitch, this is kind of interesting because we're going to come out of the coarse output here. Because if you notice, right, so the coarse knob is the only one with a modulation slider. So we want the modulation output to come out of there, all right? That's the big idea. So now we'll need to make another output for the key tracking and the fine tuning knobs, okay? So what I'll do, I'll just click enter and I'll just type in out. We'll get an output port. Hooray. So we can slide that over here and rename that key, just K track, something like that, right? And now here's a little tip. If you want, you can change the port number on here. So that changes like where is this thing actually coming out. So right now there's 3 little ports coming out of here, right? So you can see we have port 1, port 2, and port 3. So what I'm going to do is change this to port 1, and then I'm going to make another output port for the fine tuning knob, and I'm going to make that port 3, and we'll rename this to fine. Okay. You can also use the arrow keys, by the way, to shift these around. All right. Now on here, right? What I'm going to do firstly is take these, drag them down, right, and drag this to the side. Okay, yeah. And I'm using shift and the arrow keys to move that around. I don't know what it is on Mac, but frankly, I don't even know if Reaktor 6 runs on Mac now that I think about it. But anyways, so what we're going to do here, right? So we'll make the inputs, right? And we need inputs for the key tracking and for the fine tuning input. So we're gonna get all that, okay? And then what we can do is just take the key tracking output, run it into the key tracking input, the fine tuning output for the fine tuning input, okay? That is pretty cool, right? So this is going to give us all of the options we need to be able to control the pitch of our oscillator, all right? But now, they also have, luckily, they've made a way for us to process this crap, okay? So if we go back into the, you know what I mean, the like block standard library, basically, the templates, we get oscillator tuning, right? So under smoothing and modulation, oscillator tuning, sick, exactly what we need, right? You don't have to think about a thing, you know what I mean? I mean, in a, you know, later on we can like talk about how all of this stuff works, but for right now, this is just like, you know, how do you get off of your, you know what I mean? How do you get up, right? How do you start making modules, okay? Yeah, so what we can actually do, so now we're in the core cell window, okay? We can start utilizing quick buses, right? So Reaktor gives you this exciting thing to say, hey, you know what I mean? If you don't want wires all over the damn place, you can just right click this, connect to new quick bus, and it even names it with whatever, you know what I mean, the input is, okay? So once we do that, we can then connect it over here, right? And so the oscillator tuning needs to just, you know what I mean, be connected to all of these. So we'll do that. And this middle one, remember, is our course, right? So I'll right click, you know, create a new quick bus, and then over here, what I'll do is I can just rename it course, okay? So now we'll just connect these up to all of the parameters we made, and boom, awesome. So we now have oscillator tuning in our module, sick, okay? So now, let's actually connect this thing up to an oscillator, right? So what we can do is just right click, look in the library, look in audio, look in oscillator, and it gives us a bunch of oscillators. Isn't that nice of them, right? And what I'll do is I'll just get a 4-wave oscillator, you know what I mean? Cool. So that's pretty neat, and you can look at this, and by the way, if you don't have the information hints on, you go over here, show info hints. It's the little eye icon, okay? So if you hover over this, it can tell you what this block does, you know what I mean? What are all the inputs? What are the outputs, right? So this one just says it's a 4-wave oscillator. F is the frequency in hertz. So let's go ahead and send the frequency over here. Cool, because the output of the oscillator tuning is the frequency in hertz. It doesn't say that, but believe me, it is. So now we get saw, pulse, triangle, and sine outputs. So why don't I just go ahead and, well, we'll just route them out, right? Triangle outputs. Output 1, output 2, pitch and gate. Well, maybe we'll go ahead and rename this. I can delete this. Okay, so now before we move on, it is important to note, we have the parameter that's connected to a modulator, the course tune, right? And we can see when we press the parameter button, we get this modulator slider, okay? The course, so that when we're in the core cell, remember how I said, like, I don't remember what I said, but you know, it needs to combine all of the inputs, all of the information, and send it to the display, okay? So it does that through here. It combines all of the inputs, and then we need to send this to the display latch, okay? So if you don't do this, your display isn't going to update, basically, all right? So we have this. That's pretty cool. Anyways, let's go ahead and go back out into the main view. So in the util section, we can get a note in, right? We'll just put the pitch, actually the pitch is in the pitch input, and we'll just get a little VCA as well. We can start checking this out. Sweet. All right, so that's the saw, pulse, triangle, and sine. Sweet. Alright, so... Wait, that's the sine? What? Triangle, sine. Oh, that's because it's flipped on here. Interesting. So, so this is interesting, right? They have the order wrong. So we'll go here and select port 3 for that one. Alright. Cool, very cool. Alright, and we can just get... Yeah, we'll just come out of the triangle. Yeah, sick. Alright, awesome. We got an oscillator. It's working. It's cooking, you know what I mean? It was that simple. So, now what do? Well, firstly, we can get rid of this because we're not, you know what I mean? We're only using that one input here, and we can get rid of the FM and the gate and the input. You know, maybe on your oscillator you want to keep those, but here it's literally just going to be, all right, let's just get, you know, like a pitch input and yeah. So that's the big idea. Anyways, so we have all of this now. So how do we actually fix the GUI? Okay, so how do we make the GUI, right? Well, what we'll do, okay, we want to make sure that this thing is the right, like the correct width, okay? And what we can do then is go back to light width equals 2. We'll just take this one off, right? We want a reference, basically, right? Now, this isn't a rigorous way of doing this, but it'll work, right? It'll work. So what we'll do is just compare the sizes of this module and the size of what a 2 HP module should look like. So we notice this is, well, it's a little big, all right? And so maybe, you know what I mean? So we can come in here and we can try and move things around and get it to work. Okay, first thing I'm going to do is move the key tracking. And now I'm moving that fast, by the way, by hitting shift and using the arrow keys. All right, so we can click this, right? So what I'm doing here, right? So I'm selecting the parameter that I want to move, okay? So I want to move the oscillator tuning GUI elements, right? That panel element. So what I'll do, select it, and then I'll go up here to unlock the panel, right? Select it, and then I'm just going to click this little bar up here, right? So the bar that just has panel, new, you know what I mean? Also has the X button. And I'll just click it, and with my arrow keys, I can move this thing around. Isn't that cool? So we notice, well, I moved it up and I moved it to the left, and all of a sudden, you know what I mean? We're in, right? We're here, okay? And I'll go ahead and move the key tracking button. I'll move it to the top. Why not? Right? We'll put it in the corner because I think we'll add a label now. So if I go back to new, dark on light, they have large text. Let's copy that and move this in here. We'll paste it, right? And so now we can see, okay, this thing is way the hell over there. So I'll unlock the panel again. With my large text selected, I'll move this over. Okay. Now here's the thing. This is too big, but that's okay because we are going to just change the name, right? So how do we do that? Go into the large text file, click text, and we'll just type in OSC. But now the thing is, well, the width of the text box is a lot larger than the actual text contained within. So we'll just go into the viewport of this text section. We're in view, we're in part A, whatever. Go to the width, and it's okay. Cool. Well, 46 doesn't clip anything, and it keeps it a good size. So we'll just stick it with that, right? Now, I'll warn you, GUI elements are weird, but maybe, you know what I mean? Maybe we can do a little tutorial on them in the future, but that's just something you're gonna have to like practice and get the hang of, okay? So anyway, so we added text, right? Everything is working. Wow. All right, anyways. So it's all working, it's all good. But now, here's the thing. If I go to the second panel, right? So we've got the regular view, and then we've got the view with all of the inputs and outputs and whatnot. And you can see it's a bunch of hot garbage, okay? It just fucks things up. So how do we prevent this? Well, here's the thing, right? The reason why all of these are inside of these little macro boxes, okay, is so that we can do this, okay? So I'm going to select the panel elements, right? And I'll come over here, copy A to B, right? Select the oscillator tuning, copy A to B. Ooh, boom. Sweet. Look at that. Anyways, so with that, right, when we look at the B view, yes, this thing works now, but we just need to slide it over, basically, right? So what I'll do, I'll just select these things, select these little guys, I'll unlock my thing again, and just slide it on over. You know what I mean? Try and center it as best as I can. Very cool. All right, so now, when I switch between the A and B view, it's not perfect, but it'll get the job done. Might be perfect. I actually can't tell. But that's okay. If I can't tell, then we're in business, right? So the GUI mostly works, but now we've got to fix the little, now we got to fix, well, all of these, yeah, the inputs and the outputs, okay? Right, so what I'll do, again, just select the panel element that I want to move, and then I'll click the bar up there on the top section, right? And the little guys, right? And so the inputs and outputs are separated by a shift arrow key, okay? So if I want to move this thing up or down, I'll just, by one row, I'll hit shift up, right? I want to move these two panel elements, the mod A and mod B ports, right? So I'll hit shift up, shift up, shift up, right? So now that's at the top. What we want to do next, so the actual label of this is what's going to show up on the panel view, okay? So for instance, this says out 1, out 2, pitch and gate, out 1, out 2, pitch and gates, right? We're going to need to change that, obviously. So we'll click saw. We'll hit pulse. We'll do try and do sign. Cool. And now we need to change the label on the GUI panel because that still says out 1, out 2, pitch and gates, right? These are totally separate things, okay? So again, we'll just label these in capital letters, saw. So they're not centered anymore, so we'll just, again, select the panel elements we want to move, shift it over. All right, select the panel elements we want to move, shift it over. All right, we're cool with that, except that's looking a little uneven. Whatever, it is what it is. Good enough. All right, so now we've got our panel, and it's almost done, okay? What we want to do, select the knobs, okay? So this is going to be an important part for whenever you want to use Reaktor inside of a digital audio workstation, the digital audio workstation is going to be looking for the names of these knobs, okay? It's not looking at the labels here, right? So this says coarse and fine. Your DAW has no idea what that means, okay? Because that element is totally separate from the actual control, okay? So we need to label these things. So we're going to select, we're just going to click the course knob firstly, and you see how it says knob here? We're going to select that and rename it. I'll use capital letters to course. All right. And I'll do the same thing for the fine tuning knob. Cool. And the key tracking is already labeled, so we don't need to do anything with that. And that, my friends, is almost it. All right. So we've got the GUI in, we've got the actual core cell working, right? It's been, you know what I mean, nothing crazy so far. So now what we have to do is make a panel for this thing. All right. So how do we do that? Right? And what do I mean, right? A panel. So you see how like this Bento Box VCA has a little icon, the Note In has a little icon. All of these modular blocks should have an icon, right? So how do you actually make an icon? All right. All we're going to do, right, is take a screenshot of this little thing. Okay. So on my computer, I just clicked Windows Shift S. Take a screenshot. I'm just going to select the module. Awesome. Sweet. So now it's saved it in my screenshot folder. All right, so I'm here in my screenshot folder. What we're going to do is we'll select it. All we're looking to do is just resize this thing. All right, because right now this thing is 237 by 509. If we make that the icon, it's going to be freaking huge. All right. Let's open up Photoshop real quick, if we're lucky. All right, so we're here in Photoshop. We've got this little guy in here. Sweet. All we need to do, right? So I'm in Photoshop. Of course, you can do this in whatever plugin you want. But all we need to do is change the image size, okay? So I'm just going to go to image size, right? And right now we see 237 by 509. Lock the ratio, firstly, right? And we're going to change the height to 100, okay? That's the important part. If the height is 100, you're in business, all right? Yeah, that's all I'm going to do. I'm not even going to mess with any other bull crap, right? So we'll do that, and we'll just export, quick export as a PNG. So I've got a folder for all of my little GUI things, right? So icon, we'll do OSC icon. Name it that. Great. Now I can close this. I'm not even going to save it because all I did was just resize an image. Not that important. So we'll click on our oscillator. We'll click function. And all the way at the bottom is icon. So we'll select the image, open from file. It'll bring this up, right? And we've just got to find this little guy, right? OSC icon. Okay, we'll bring it in. Frame height is 100, so we're in business. Boom, boom. We've got a cool looking little block, don't we? So we've got the icon in here now. Boom. This thing looks professional, right? The last thing that we can do is come over here and change what all of the information buttons show, right? So whenever you hover over something, it'll give you a little bit of information about that. If you're, wow, these are actually pretty close. Anyways, so yeah, if you're dying to do that, go for it. You know what I mean? And like legit blocks, you know, you should do this. I don't always do this because I'm a little lazy, and frankly, the developers don't always do this either. So this is the big idea, right? And now one thing that we should do before we close this thing out is check to make sure that the modulation works, right? So I'll duplicate this real quick. All right, that's that one on the left, and we can just route the triangle into the course knob, or into the modulation inputs, and let's check if they work. Sick. Word. Working. All right. We'll also check out the B input. All right. Works like a charm. last thing we'll do, we'll save this instrument, right? So I'm just going to save this in the blocks folder here. So we'll do, so there's like a naming convention. So our oscillator, right, start with OSC dash and then the name of it, which we also just named oscillator. So I'll just name it OSC, right? Basic oscillator, you know what I mean? But you can name it whatever you want, right? And that is the big idea. Anyways, that is it, right? That is how you get started, you know what I mean, making your own blocks. Okay, I hope you found this informative, right? And I hope to see some more blocks, right? If you make any blocks and this was your inspiration for it, you can leave a link to the, Reaktor user library. So yeah, go out there, start making some blocks. Word. Anyways, take it easy, y'all.